The bad news, the 49ers lost to the Rams in week 3, falling to 1-2 on the season. The good news, there are things to get fixed, and we've got some quotes from 49ers players on how to fix those things coming up on today's Locked On 49ers.
You are Locked On 49ers, your daily San Francisco 49ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On 49ers. Brian Peacock and Eric Crocker at BD Peacock at Crocky209. Thanks, everybody, for making this your first listen right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Love all everydayers out there. And welcome to all the new listeners of Locked On 49ers. We appreciate you as well. Make sure you are subscribed so you can catch us every day on YouTube or wherever you are listening to this podcast. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers brought to you by FanDuel. You place your first $5 bet at FanDuel and get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. It's the latest offer from FanDuel for new customers. Just a $5 bet, $200 in bonus bets. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right. Therapy pod needed after 2 straight losses for the 49ers. And I don't know how therapeutic this will be, but I think we can identify some things to fix. And I think the 49ers are still a good team, are going to be okay. We'll do a little look ahead as well at the end of the schedule and what is upcoming for the 49ers, including week 4 against the New England Patriots at home, which better be a get-right game for the San Francisco 49ers. And as it stands right now, Croc, the 49ers at 1-2 have the same record as the Rams, as the Arizona Cardinals, as the Carolina Panthers, as the Denver Broncos, the New York Giants. This is not where the 49ers want to be. And I want to go back actually 1 week with the first quote and go to Fred Warner. After last week's loss, Fred Warner said this, quote, "Too many my bads, too many, man, I'll try and have a better next time, or try to be better next time. Me included. We've got to play more together as a team. We've just got to do our job, play smarter football, and the rest will take care of itself. We've just got to play smarter." And then you fast forward a week and a quote from Nick Bosa. And he says after the game, the old move on, got to move on cliche is not going to cut it this time. He said, quote, "I think we have to feel the loss. We can't just move on and act like it's fine." So I think that vibe is really different right now for the 49ers sitting here this Monday versus last Monday, Croc. Last Monday, it was like, we're better than this. We're going to get it right. We'll be back on track, play smarter next week. This time is like, okay, we can't just bypass this and say this was a blip. This was a speed bump for us. We've got to feel this loss. Can't just move on and act like it's okay. Some things need to get fixed. What do you think it is that needs to get fixed this week? Because now it's 2 straight for the 49ers, Croc.
Man, I mean, for 3 quarters, it didn't look like anything needed to be fixed. And then when you have that kind of meltdown in the 4th quarter where everyone had a hand in it, the defense, the special teams, the offense, that's when you have to start doing a little soul searching, because that disastrous of a 4th quarter ultimately led to the loss, like single-handedly. And again, it was in all phases. So I like that they are taking accountability. I like that they are saying, hey, we really have to fix something here, because when you lose games like this, especially to the 2 opponents that they lost to, now I get it. I mean, maybe the Vikings, they're just hella good. I'm watching them right now. I mean, I was watching yesterday, Sam Darnold playing really good football, threw 3 touchdowns. I mean, dude was just balling. All right, their defense too. We thought it was, Brock Purdy, they did a good job. 49ers don't have all their guys, but it wasn't even just Brock. I mean, you see what they just did to CJ Stroud? And Stroud is a terrific young quarterback. So maybe the Vikings are just really good. But then when you go and you play Los Angeles, and it's a home game, essentially, Levi South there, 75% 49er fans in the stands, you're up double digits, and then you let that game slip away. I think you definitely have to look a little deeper into what is our current culture? Like, what is the state of this team and how do we fix it? I think this is a great time to have one of those really heart-to-heart team meetings. Hey, no coaches, just the players. Let's talk about it. We got to get this together. And it sounded like Nick Bosa was kind of alluding to doing something like that.
And you saw Bosa during the post-game press conference. He's drinking a bunch of water. He played every snap. He played 104 snaps, every single defensive snap on Sunday, 58 of 58, 104 snaps, thanks to the numbers from Eric Branch of the Chronicle, 104 snaps over the last 2 games. And just as far as edge rushers go, and I think this is a defensive line depth problem, because the 49ers defensive line looked good and it was roughing up the Rams early in the game, multiple pressures, including Javon Hargrave, who we're going to get to in a second. But there's one play where they all just met at the quarterback. It was Bosa, it was Hargrave, it was Collins got a sack, it was Leonard Floyd, the entire starting defensive line. But if you look at the last 2 games, Leonard Floyd and Yetur Gross-Matos have been on a rotation where it's been about 60-40, 61 snaps for Leonard Floyd, 46 snaps for Yetur Gross-Matos, and again, 104 snaps for Nick Bosa over the last 2 games. And Robert Beal is the only other edge rusher that has entered the game. He's played 7 snaps over 2 games. And so there's a sort of a viral clip going around of Niners defensive tackle Javon Hargrave, who again was the best pass rusher on the team in this game, especially early. A rep of him later in the game where he's not doing much of anything, and he's getting called out for effort. And the 49ers defensive line is getting called out for effort in this game because they lost the fourth quarter, right? They lost the second half, even though they came out really strong. And I just saw a guy look tired. I think the 49ers defensive line has been gassed. And so I don't think the 49ers have a talent problem on the defensive line. There's some teams that would kill to have a starting defensive line of Bosa, Hargrave, Collins, and Leonard Floyd. That's a really good, that's a professional defensive line, right? But maybe not enough depth. And these guys are already gassed early in the season. We've seen it from Trent Williams too, who didn't have a training camp, and he's looked like he hasn't had a training camp. He hasn't played as well up to his Hall of Fame level the first 3 weeks, and he's been tired and has gotten IVs in at least 2 of the 3 games the 49ers have played. And so I don't know what that it's just a lack of preseason games. Will they get their legs under them at some point? Do they need to filter in more depth players to keep those guys fresh? But I do think the 49ers defensive line, especially, and probably the offensive line too, was pretty gassed at the end of that game. Maybe that's why they lost.
I was going to bring up that aspect of preseason games. I think it's a big issue, and I think it's catching up to a lot of teams right now where they're just reluctant to play any of their guys, any of their starters. I mean, some teams don't play their starters at all. And then we're seeing kind of this influx in injuries over the last couple of years. I'd love to kind of dive into the stats and see, how big of an issue it is around the league. But I'm not surprised by anything that's going on, whether it's a slow start by a team that you have higher expectations for. Quarterback play around the league really starting off very, very slow. The continuity between offense, defense, everybody getting on the same page. The 49ers have had issues with communication, like on the back end, that I think has been bad and has really hurt them over the last couple of weeks. Like, to me, all those things speak to a lack of preseason reps. And I hopefully it's that simple, because if that's the case, then, in 2 weeks, they'll have these things figured out and they'll be fine. A few weeks, okay, they'll get better. But if it is something different, maybe it's just fatigue in general, but I think it could be more issues popping up if it's not just, lack of preseason action.
And by the way, Bosa was a little banged up. He was questionable on the injury report heading into this game, right? And he still played every single snap. So he's going to need a rest here and there, is Nick Bosa. And I think you're right about the communication, especially new defensive coordinator, maybe some defensive changes, and communication needs to be better. And it was definitely a problem last week. And I think that's something that can absolutely be better. And so the good news is, the therapy side of this pod is you look ahead, and those things are fixable. And they should be fixed for the 49ers. And hopefully they're fixed very soon. Like, we're talking week number 4. Next, Croc, you mentioned the back end of the defense. I want to talk about a quote from Deommodore Lenoir. I want to talk about some snap counts from the 49ers wide receivers. Something very curious about that as well from the loss at the Los Angeles Rams. And Brock Purdy, I thought he was awesome this week, but is he a little bit more hesitant this year than he was last year? And does that have to do with him not having his number one wide receiver in camp this year, especially in week number 3 with everybody else being out of the game? So all that and more coming up on the rest of this episode of Locked On 49ers. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just some job board either. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job, but might be open to the perfect role in a given month. Over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. In fact, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours at LinkedIn. So hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn Jobs. And LinkedIn knows small businesses are wearing so many hats. They might not have all the time and resources they need to hire. So they're constantly finding more ways to make the process faster and easier. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, Croc. Here is a quote from 49ers cornerback Deommodore Lenoir. And he said after the loss at his locker that, quote, "This loss comes from being too complacent. We was up 14-0. We should have put them away. We gave them hope, and they were able to come back and win the game. This loss has got a lot to do with finishing," end quote. That sounds a lot like what we said after the game, Croc. And we didn't really mention complacency, but we mentioned being able to put them away. And the players on the field felt the same thing. And Deommodore Lenoir was talking about it. He's talking about finishing, the finer points, being complacent. So those sound all like things that the 49ers can fix. Now, how do you fix those? And can you get those fixed by week 4?
You fix them by really like banging out those things, making them important in meetings, calling guys out. Nobody likes to be called out in front of their peers, and talking about effort down the stretch, things that will ultimately result in a loss. Heck, I had a high school coaching meeting last night. We're watching Zoom with our kids, and one of my kids did something that I thought was despicable. And I told him, hey, if this other kid was healthy, you wouldn't be on the field right now, especially doing things like this, holding guys accountable so that they get the message. And hopefully moving forward, you don't see those same issues arise. And if they do, then it's your fault for having that guy on the field as a coach.
Mentioned Nick Bosa was a little banged up coming into the game. Charvarius Ward was too, and he actually left the field and came back. And Charvarius Ward is getting beat up a little bit from fans for having a subpar game. And he didn't look right. I don't think he was moving well. And I think that injury bothered him. And my question to you is, did you see the same thing? And if you can't run and you're a cornerback, would have been better for the 49ers to go with Rock Ya-Sin or, go with Bernardo Green, the rookie, go a different direction if Ward was that banged up back there?
It's a side with Charvarius Ward. I think there's a lot of things that he does very well. Last year, wasn't he an all-pro cornerback? Like he's played at a high level for the 49ers. But if there's one thing that can kind of bite them in the rear end a little bit with how he plays at times, I don't think he's the best in off coverage where he has to turn and run. Like that's probably the bigger thing. He's a good zone corner, but it's that backpedal, turn, run vertical with guys. There's a lot of times I see guys get behind him. And maybe it's because at different times he's been injured or banged up. We've seen him deal with like some lower body extremity injuries, whether it was hamstrings and whatnot. Where I could think of a play in the conference championship game against the Philadelphia Eagles a couple years ago where, you just see guys get behind them. So that's something that has happened time and time again. And if you are an offensive coordinator, that's something that I would be looking to exploit with him. Hey, when he's pressed up at the line of scrimmage, he's really good. Hey, when you run routes underneath, when he's in the off coverage, he's really good. Where can we get him? Hey, let's set it up to where we get him an off coverage where he has to turn and run. That's where we could potentially get him and have a big play, but we have to capitalize on it. And we watched that happen where the Rams definitely capitalized on that. So is it because he's hurt? I'm pretty sure that can definitely contribute to it, but this is an issue I've seen with him in years past.
I think Deommodore Lenoir has been the best DB for the 49ers pretty clearly over the first 3 weeks. What do you think about the safety tandem? Jair Brown taking some heat as well, and Talanoa Hufanga's first start of the season against the Rams. He looked close to himself, but he was actually a couple times you could tell he wasn't quite moving. Maybe I don't know if he was thinking about it or just like kind of after the play, kind of limping a little bit. He's coming back from his first game from an ACL. It's a major injury.
Yeah, the mental hurdle aspect of it for Talanoa Hufanga is going to be the biggest thing. A lot of times guys come back, they may be fine, but man, it's just that kind of timidness of, all right, like how good am I? And eventually that wears off. Heck, I remember 2019, Jimmy Garoppolo coming off of the torn ACL injury. He had a preseason game against the Denver Broncos. Was not good at all, right? He's throwing interceptions, throwing off his back foot. I remember one time he was about to get hit as he was throwing, and he kind of like lifted his leg in the sense of like, oh, please don't fall on my leg. Like you could tell he's thinking about it. It takes a while for quarterbacks to get, or just people and players in general, to get that aspect out of their head, the mental hurdle. That's like the last thing. So Hufanga, first action of the season, first action since having his injury, that definitely could be something that is in the back of his mind and kind of limiting him, potentially being a step slower here and there. His superpower isn't being the most freakish athlete on the field. It's being able to see things, diagnose things, and then react full speed. And if he's just a little hesitant, that takes away a lot of what makes him good. Kind of like, I've talked about Jimmy Garoppolo. Like, Brock Purdy. What's Brock Purdy's superpower? It's, post-snap reads. When he's a little hesitant, and I know we're going to get to that, but when things start getting a little hesitant for him, it's almost like you see kind of a different version of him, at least on those plays. So for Hufanga, his superpower is something that doesn't take being the best athlete on the field. But man, if he scales back a little bit on that, I think you see a different version of him that isn't great. And right now, there are a lot of people that are questioning, hey, what is the 49ers safety group looking like? I would say with Malik Mustafa, he's young, he's seeing things. The more he sees things, he may be able to react because he might be the best athlete of them. And even then, Mustafa's not a great athlete. But I think a lot of that has to do with where the 49ers have been drafting some of these safeties.
Malik Mustafa was the one that missed a tackle on that long kick return as well, the punt return in the fourth quarter of that game. So, just a lot of little things that the 49ers can clean up. It's not like, oh, man, we have a garbage quarterback. There's nothing you can do about it. We got to go into the draft next year and fix it. Yeah. Those aren't the type of problems that the 49ers have. They have good players on every unit of their football team. They've played subpar football the last 2 weeks, and they can get better. And I think the stars of the team, Fred Warner, Bosa, and even young Brock Purdy now is become like a grizzled vet. And I think their voices are really going to carry here with how they carry themselves and go into this with, I think, a very business-like attitude in week 4 against the New England Patriots. And you mentioned the Brock Purdy hesitancy. His time to throw is slower this year. And again, I don't know if it's because of a lack of playing time and practice time, specifically with Brandon Ayuk here in week 3. And one of the big plays of this game, one of the few plays that Brock Purdy didn't make, because Brock Purdy, again, was really good in this game. And this isn't besmirching Brock Purdy, but there is some hesitancy. And we've been asked about this a lot, so I want to address it, Croc. Does he look hesitant to you? Because he definitely looked hesitant on one play that could have been a huge play in this game, could have swung the game for the 49ers, where Brandon Ayuk broke open. And this isn't like you screenshot it and the quarterback's looking over here and it's not even part of the progression. There's a wide open wide receiver. He's looking, it looks like, and maybe he's not, it looks like he's looking at Brandon Ayuk, and there's no reason to not throw the ball unless he thinks he really just can't get the ball there. Like maybe he saw it just late enough to where he doesn't believe in his arm to be able to get it out to where it needs to be. And if you say Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes or Matthew Stafford or even Sam Darnold, and you got a big arm and you can trust it and you can get it out there, maybe they make that throw. Does the hesitancy show that Brock Purdy might not believe in himself being able to put the ball where he wants to in some of these cases? That would worry me a little bit.
I don't think he's ever lacked confidence in some of the throws that he's able to make. But when you hear him talk to Flores and say, man, like that scheme was crazy, right? Like, and it was just causing a little hesitancy. There were times where he was taking sacks and not all. I mean, listen, the offensive line protection, not amazing for the San Francisco 49ers. But there were some where you're like, Brock, well, why didn't you throw it? We're looking at the guy. And it's just a little hesitant. Mm-hmm. And that little hesitance ends up leading to a sack or him start to run around and scramble around. And now we're seeing back-to-back games where I don't know if it's something that defensive coordinators are doing. He's not playing bad. Like, I didn't think he played bad or, didn't have his best game, but, against the Jets, against the Vikings, I think he played better against the Jets than he did the Vikings, but it's not like this horrible game where it's just like, man, we can't do anything. It's just super incompetent offense, but just certain things that are a little bit less characteristic coming from Brock Purdy. So in this game, completed 22 out of 30 passes, moved around, made plays with his legs. I thought I saw a lot of positive things. Heck, I thought one of the more positive things was being able to look like Brock Purdy without the Avengers, which lets me know something else about Brock Purdy. I think just the grasp that he has on the offense and the scheme, we've talked about a lot. It's not dependent on any one specific player. It does incorporate a lot of guys, but especially in the passing game, it's not like, hey, we're going to force feed the ball to Ayuk. We're going to force feed the ball to Juwan Jennings. So I came away even more impressed that regardless of who the 49ers have, if they have to pay him a lot of money and they start losing guys, they'll still be able to function in this offense at a very high level. But the one thing that can kind of deter that a little bit, throw things off, is if he's not quite sure what he's seeing pre-snap. And there are some quarterbacks, let's say like a Josh Allen, those guys who, not quite sure, but man, I got this bazooka of an arm that I can still get the ball in there. And sometimes that hurts him, throws a lot of interceptions. I think for Brock, we saw down the stretch there, a little hesitant at certain times. And it's not something that we consistently see, but it has been something we've seen in moments over the last 2 weeks. And I think that's a little uncharacteristic of him.
Yeah, and that's the thing that's uncharacteristic. This isn't like his first two starts. And it's like, oh, man, this is a guy who's maybe not seeing it well. He's a super confident quarterback the way he throws. And again, more practice time, more games with Ayuk specifically. But I think we're going to see that.
Everybody brings up the 1-2 Brandon Ayuk. But to me, one that was just as big was not hitting the tight end out in the flat. And I watched it again today, watched the all 22 version of it. And you could just see that, hey, they're clearing it out for him. It's pretty much Ayuk and Juwan Jennings. And the Rams were playing man coverage. And the DB or the linebacker who was covering the tight end got caught up in the traffic. And they cleared right out for the tight end for the 49ers, Eric Saubert. You hit him, boom, he turns upfield, you get the first down. I don't even think that the game ends up going how it does. But instead, Brock Purdy didn't quite see it. Think he locked on to Jennings or Ayuk because he's looking in that direction with all those guys. And he just takes off and tries to run up the middle of the field. Maybe he picks up a yard. 49ers ended up having to punt it. That was when they had the long punt return. And we know how that all ended up playing out for the San Francisco 49ers. So, again, that was one where it's like, did you not feel comfortable throwing it to him or did you just lock on to other guys? But Brock's superpower is being able to diagnose and see those things before it happens. Oh, got the tight end here. Those two guys are going to clear it out. That linebacker is going to get caught in the traffic. I'm going to throw this out. Boom, gets the ball out, and everybody's like, whoa, he always has guys wide open. Well, it's like he sees it before it even happens. So I think that really helps. Didn't happen late in the game on those two specific plays that the 49ers really needed. And I always point out, those are the things that you need to win a Super Bowl, ultimately, seeing those things in that moment.
One of Ayuk's drops, he threw a little behind him. And like you're nitpicking, and he still hit him in the hands. Probably should have dropped it. I think he was credited with the drop, but maybe he could have thrown out in front a little bit more. But again, like 3 out of 30 throws. He was awesome in this game. Otherwise, it shouldn't have come down to those throws. But again, he had an opportunity to make a couple more plays that he didn't. Little hesitancy with Brock Purdy the last couple of weeks, which is uncharacteristic. I think we're going to see Gunslinger Brock very soon. Next, Croc, wide receiver usage. Why was not Jacob Cowing on the field at all? Even after his GM said he'd probably get some opportunities in that game. And let's look ahead to the 49ers schedule and what could be in potentially and hopefully a get-right game starting next week. Next. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets at FanDuel.com. And, of course, place your bets for the San Francisco 49ers to win the Super Bowl, for offensive, defensive rookies of the year, for coaches of the year, year-long bets, weekly bets. Place your bet for the 49ers right now because you might get the best odds of the season for a game that They're going to absolutely destroy the New England Patriots next week. Absolute get-right game, and I don't think they can make the line big enough for the 49ers here in this one coming up next week. They're going to be an angry San Francisco 49ers team, although I thought that in week 3 against the Los Angeles Rams too. You can find all of that action, NBA, NHL, Major League Baseball, every sport imaginable, combat sports, car racing, all of it at FanDuel.com. Download the FanDuel app or go to FanDuel.com. All right, Croc. I want to go to the wide receivers really quick. And look, I don't want to bury Ronnie Bell anymore. He's the public enemy number 1 for San Francisco 49ers fans after the multiple drops, including the biggest one of the game in the fourth quarter.
Sometimes when it's guys like that, I know we want to harp on them, but if it weren't for injuries, he wouldn't be out there. So I get it. Everybody wants him cut. They want this and that. But if Ricky Pearsall was healthy heading into the season, if Deebo Samuel was healthy right now, you have those guys, you don't see Ronnie Bell on the field. So I get it. You want to get on him, but he's kind of in a position that's not suited for him. That's not what the 49ers have him for. They probably have him because, he knows the offense, but really, hey, let's use him on special teams.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, they've had to use him in a bigger role. And, of course, he kind of shrinks in that moment because he's not suited to be that guy. And the 49ers don't expect him to be that guy. You do have to figure out something, though. I don't know if you go with Cowling, the rookie. I know Kyle Shanahan, sometimes with younger guys, he doesn't quite want to play them right away. But you can't be out there kind of, having multiple drops in the game and not making any plays. You make some plays, all right, I could deal with some drops. But when you're not making any plays and you can't be reliable, that's when it's more of an issue.
Are you sure Ricky Pearsall would have been out there? Because rookie Jacob Cowling wasn't out there in front of Ronnie Bell. And you're right. It's not Ronnie Bell's fault that he had 30 snaps that he probably shouldn't have had. And look, he cut him, whatever it is. I'm not going to call for his job or anything like that. But I do think there was plays that he should not have been out there. And it's probably most of the plays. Especially so Juwan Jennings had 60 snaps. Of the 71 overall offensive snaps. Juwan Jennings led the 49ers. He had 60 snaps. Ayuk, just a few less, had 57 snaps. Then Ronnie Bell had 30 snaps, and Chris Connolly had 20 snaps. So even if you don't trust the rookie, how is Ronnie Bell getting 30 snaps and Chris Connolly's getting 20 snaps in the 49ers offense? I don't get that. I would trust Chris Connolly for what I've seen over the last couple of years all day long over Ronnie Bell. And the rookie Jacob Cowling, 0 snaps, Croc. And when the 49ers started sputtering and the offense wasn't quite working right, and you've got Ronnie Bell dropping the football, that's what I have a problem with. I don't even blame Ronnie Bell because he shouldn't have been put in that situation. I blame Kyle Shanahan. I blame the coaching staff on not given an opportunity to throw the ball more to Chris Conley. And I definitely trust Chris Conley over Ronnie Bell. Jacob Cowling, get the guy on the field, even if you don't trust him to run the right route. Call a screen pass. Call something to get the ball in his hands to throw a change up and try to get a dynamic play from your fastest wide receiver in a game where your offense has started to stall out. And the fact that they couldn't do that is what I have a problem with. And it's not Ronnie Bell's fault that he was put in a spot that he shouldn't have been in. I would blame. What? 10 of those snaps should have gone to Cowling, and 10 more of his snaps should have gone to Connolly. It should have been Connolly with the 30 snaps, then maybe Ronnie Bell and Jacob Cowling with 10 snaps each or something like that. Even if you do trust Ronnie Bell in some situations that you don't trust the rookie. But again, if you can't trust Ronnie Bell to catch the ball, what could Jacob Cowling do that's so much worse than what Ronnie Bell already did? So how's he getting 30 snaps? Jacob Cowling can't get on the field one time.
And with Ronnie Bell, at least you already know what he is, right? You go back and, I was talking about it with some buddies to last preseason. So this preseason, he struggled. But last preseason, he did have some big games. I remember that. But also he had some drops. And a couple of drops of his that led to interceptions in games. So the signs have been there for Ronnie Bell and kind of in moment and how disastrous it could be. And so you continue to put him out there. It's that is more on the coaching staff than anything.
I think Bill Belichick had this quote recently. He was talking about player personnel. He's like, look, you're going to miss in the draft. You're going to miss sometimes in free agency. And there's sometimes it's an incomplete picture. You don't know the guy, but you better get your own players right. You better have the proper scouting report and know your own players. And I think that's kind of what the failure was for the 49ers in this one is, and maybe they know Chris Connolly and Jacob Cowling better than we do. And those guys are even worse than Ronnie Bell. Hard to imagine, but and like this isn't a hindsight thing. This was before the game. This is during the game. I saw Ronnie Bell the first quarter. The moment I saw Ronnie Bell run out of the field as wide receiver 3, I tweeted out, I would really like Jacob Cowling to get some of these Ronnie Bell snaps, and ended up being one of the worst decisions Kyle Shanahan made in the game was having Ronnie Bell giving Ronnie Bell too big of a role. A guy that if Brandon Ayuk didn't hold out, I don't think Ronnie Bell would have even made the team. And then you wouldn't even have this problem, unless he was on the practice squad and got called up for it or something like that. But that I don't like that at all. Like you drafted this guy, he's on your roster, put him on the field. He can do something that maybe some of the other guys can't, especially when your offense starts sputtering in the second half.
Especially, where he was drafted, 4th round. Like typically, that's not like super late. It's not like you're a 7th round pick and it's like, we don't know. Or undrafted guys like 4th round, you liked him, and then he showed some good stuff in preseason.
Yeah, and he's got a uniform on. He's your punt returner, so it's not like he's inactive or something like that.
Right.
So utilize the players you have. Looking ahead, Croc. I hesitate because I said this pretty much verbatim about the Rams in week 3, but this is look, remember when we're looking at the schedule preseason and we're like, okay, Seattle, short week, Thursday night, week 6, Kansas City, week 7, Dallas Cowboys, week 8. Things get serious in week 6. Hopefully the 49ers have 4 or 5 wins at that point. Well, they're not going to because they're 1-2 right now. Best they can be heading into Seattle on a short week is 3-2. And guess what? The Arizona Cardinals are going to be a little bit more difficult than we thought. In fact, have the same record as the 49ers, as do the New England Patriots right now. So the Patriots in week 4, Cards week 5, then you're on the road at Seattle short week, then back home again against the Kansas City Chiefs, the Dallas Cowboys week 7 and 8, then a week 9 bye. The 49ers have to start winning some of these games. And dropped a couple that we penciled in as W's before the season. So it gets real serious, and they're going to have this has to be a business trip. Remember when the 49ers were wearing all black when they showed up to play the Philadelphia Eagles? That's the team I want. That's the mindset I want this week against the New England Patriots. And if you go up by 2 scores, then you better make it 4 scores in the second half instead of letting them hang around and potentially kick a game-winning field goal against you.
The 49ers all of last year, they lost 5 games. And the last game that they lost was a game where they played some of their guys for like a quarter, right? So we're going to even throw that game out. So you got 4 losses. You're halfway there after 3 games. And I'll say this. It's not all about how you start, but when you do have a little bit more of a rough start, you don't want to dig yourself in such a deep hole that you end up having to do like they did in 2021. Where it's like, man, you got to win this game. And then it comes down to, okay, are the Saints going to win or not? And then then you got to win, and you're down 17-0 to the Rams at halftime. And, you don't want to sweat it out like that. So let's start taking care of business. And you got the New England Patriots coming up. This is a team that has, I think, overachieved even like slightly with some of the play that they've had early on. But I watched them against the Jets, and it's a team that just can't operate offensively at all. They can't pass protect. They don't have enough weapons. The run game is, and they want to run the ball a ton because they can't really throw the ball. That's a team that you should handle business there. And that should be the game where you come out, you punch them in the mouth, and you say, all right, we're back. We're dominant. I thought this was the game. And I remember closing out the last episode saying, well, I thought this about the Vikings, and the Vikings kind of kicked the 49ers' butt. And then you go into the Rams game, and I'm like, I was wrong. 49ers up 14-0. Rams can't move the ball. I was completely wrong. This won't be close at all. And lo and behold, the 49ers ended up kind of melting down at the end. So you can't do that against this Patriots team. This is a team that even the Rams game, you could kind of the Matthew Stafford effect of it, right? But they had a lot of guys hurt on defense. They had guys hurt on offense. There's no way they really beat the 49ers. Kyle Shanahan, he's kind of owned Sean McVay. None of it mattered. They ended up figuring out a way to win. You can't let that happen in this game against the Patriots at all.
And looking ahead even further, Seattle Seahawks in a couple of weeks. Again, that's a short week on the road at the Seattle Seahawks. It's going to be a tough game. But Seahawks, even though they're 3-0 right now, they're not going to run away with this division because I'm hesitant looking at the strength of those 3 victories because this is who they've played. rookie Bo Nix in his first ever NFL start in week 1. And they won that. They didn't win that by much. Then at the New England Patriots, they only won by a field goal against Jacoby Brissett in that game. Drake May even making an appearance at the end of that game. And then they got Skylar Thompson and not Tua against the Dolphins this week. So like a little bit of a paper tiger. By the way, they're at the Detroit Lions, so a much bigger test. I'll be a believer in the Seahawks if they do a number on the Lions this week, as they did the first 3 weeks, and especially as they did against the Dolphins this week. And then they've got the Giants. So there's a very real chance, even if they lose to the Lions, when the Niners play in week 6, the 49ers have to win out to be over 500 before that game. And there's a very good chance the Seahawks are at least 4-1 by that matchup. So it's going to be a big one. And it's a tough ask for a team to go on the road on Thursday night and win too. So this is serious. The 49ers can't screw around and like lose these winnable games anymore. Like that can't happen the rest of the way.
Not especially with the Cardinals. Like that team, they're coming in. I know they have the same record as the 49ers right now. Heading into the season, if you said, hey, 3 weeks in, the Cardinals, they lose to Buffalo in the close game. It was a 1-score game, but then they destroy the LA Rams. And then they come back and they lose to the Lions. You'd be like, okay, I could see that. And then when you watch kind of how they've played in these games and how certain things have been a problem with Kyler Murray being able to use his legs, being able to make plays down the field, this is a team that is definitely going to be tougher than what we expected heading into the season. So, yeah, you got to win games like this New England game. You had to win that game last week against the Rams, who are shorthanded on both sides of the ball.
And again, it's numerous issues for the 49ers, but they're small issues. They can clean up everything that's wrong right now. These aren't issues that are complete black holes that can't be fixed. It's not because McCaffrey was hurt or because Debo's hurt. That's not the reason the 49ers lost this last game. The 49ers can clean up some of these things. And, maybe Nick Sorensen, defensive coordinator, needs a little time. Can they fix some of their issues on special teams as well? Some coaching points. And this is a good coaching staff. And I believe in Kyle Shanahan. I believe he is a good coach. And so they're going to have to figure these things out and get this stuff cleaned up. So I'm looking at Shanahan. I'm looking at the leaders on the team, Bosa and Fred Warner, to get this ship righted. And I need Trent Williams and Brandon Ayuk start looking like they had a training camp, because right now they look like they don't. So not a great way to start the season right now for the 49ers, but all fixable things. And it's a long season. It's a marathon. So just getting started here. Make sure you hang out with us all season long for this marathon every single day. Locked On 49ers. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcasting, for making us your first listen. Back tomorrow, right here. Locked On 49ers.
Subscribe to this video.